Добрый вечер.
Good afternoon. You've been waiting quite a while, and a lot of things to discuss with President Lukashenko. I'm ready to take your questions, please. Well, the question is, we know that you had a busy schedule during this visit, and it was devoted to Eurasian Economic Union, but there are breaking news about the drone that entered the territory of Romania. And the question is, why Europeans that are escalating the rhetoric around this thing so much, why didn't they shut it down? It might seem odd, but just before I entered this hall, I was told that something happened with our drone, allegedly. If you could repeat what happened one more time, I would be very grateful. I'm not joking, then I could comment this. TASS news agency, the question is, Europeans... No, yes, I heard the question, but what the drone... Why didn't they shut it down? Can you hear me? I don't even understand what you're talking about. Someone told me just before I entered here, a drone entered the Romanian airspace. No, I don't know. What drone? So please tell me, what's the information in the media now? A drone hit a residential building in Romania. And they say it's a Russian drone. Who says that it's a Russian drone? Many people. Many people means no one. Precisely who? Names. Ursula von der Leyen. Well, she didn't go to Romania, she didn't investigate, she didn't look at the remnants of the drone. No one can say where a flying vehicle came from before they run a forensic analysis, because some drones, Ukrainian drones, enter Finnish airspace, Polish airspace, the Baltic countries' airspace. Ukrainian drones do that, and the first reaction was exactly the same like they have now in Romania. Russians are hitting us, they were saying, and then they found out that these drones had nothing to do with Russia. Russia had nothing to do with these drones. They came from Ukraine. They strayed off under the influence of jammers or for whatever other reason, maybe some technical error or deficiency. And I believe that the same is happening here, has happened here. And until we receive some objective data, like the data that we handed over to the representatives of the American administration, the data and the debris of the drone that hit the residence of the Russian president, so we gave the findings. If we receive this data from them, and then we can share our estimates of what happened. Don Vernitsky, Channel 1, if you could sum up your state visit to Kazakhstan. And the second question, a lot of documents were signed, including the one on the construction of a nuclear power plant here, and on the state expert loan that is going to be issued by Russia to fund the construction. Is it profitable for Russia to pay our own money to build a plant here? Because Kazakhstan seems to be a wealthy country. Well, conditions of the funding are, in this case, are similar with all the other transactions and deals and operations in all the other regions. It's a standard international practice. If someone is doing something, then, as a rule, this country earmarks some funds. In European countries and in our countries, we now have these loans that are earmarked to support domestic export, in this case, export of commodities and services. So it is profitable for us. What I mean is, we are not giving this money away. We are loaning this money, and we are going to get this money back to our budget because there is an interest rate, which is normally the case, and the interest rate is quite acceptable. It's in line with all the international standards. And then we have our plants and factories receiving the orders to manufacture something, and then in the future we also service, maintain the plant, we provide spare parts and fuel and so on. So it is profitable for Russia, also because we have a long-term cooperation with Kazakhstan in the field of raw uranium. And it is profitable for us because Kazakhstan is one of the countries with one of the largest uranium deposits. And it is profitable for Kazakhstan as well because logistics, everything is located nearby. We are partners in the field of nuclear energy. So it is also profitable to make progress in this regard. So we are not just supplying fuel, and we're also receiving the technology. It is important for all the partners of ours, including Kazakhstan. We are not just building something using the state loan. We are establishing an industry. We are training personnel. We are attracting local employees to work there. I don't remember how many of them will be in Kazakhstan, but at least 25% of all the works that are to happen during the construction works. So that's something that our partners are in charge of. We supply fuel, we dispose of the spent fuel, and we discussed how we can think together and supply the fuel to this plant together, because 20% of the energy consumption in Kazakhstan will be satisfied with this nuclear, covered with this nuclear plant. So it is profitable for the both sides. We've been drafting this agreement for a long time. We've been looking for a compromise, so a lot of work was done to make it profitable for both Russia and Kazakhstan. And there was a question about summing up this state visit. We are happy with this visit because we drew a line, because we discussed what was accomplished. We have a record high trade turnover, and we have good growth trends. So we discussed the priorities in our cooperation in all the priority areas, and we discussed all the areas of our cooperation. And leading role here is with the humanitarian cooperation, because maintaining good neighborly relations, basically familiar relations between our states, between our nationals, is of utmost importance, because it creates the long-term important level of trust between the two states. As you know, we've launched a new project in the field of education, on education for the gifted children on the basis of the Sirius program, and we are grateful to the President of Kazakhstan for the attention he's paying to develop Russian language in all the schools, in all the educational institutions. There are classes in Russian, and they welcome this. And the President of Kazakhstan has a vast experience in foreign affairs, including the United Nations, and he understands the importance, the significance of being fluent in foreign languages. So in our relations with Kazakhstan, for a long time we were one state, and in the Soviet Union, Russian language was a language of inter-ethnic communication, and he believes it's important. He supports it, and Russian is an official language of the UN, and it is very important considering the growing trade turnover. You know, it may sound primitive, but the more economic ties we have, the more the language is in demand. So to develop the economy, it is also very important to support Russian language. And President of Kazakhstan, he doesn't just understand this, he's making practical steps to support it. So I believe all the goals that we have set, we have accomplished, and we are happy with the outcome of this joint effort. Izvestia, the question is, Armenia was widely discussed both during the summit and on the sidelines. So what Armenia gains from being part of the Eurasian Economic Union, and what does it stand to lose if it withdraws from the organization? Well, I expected this question because that's something that we discussed during the NATO forum meeting, and I told... We discussed that with the Deputy Prime Minister of the Armenian government. I said that the only way to speak about that is being open about this, being honest and sincere about this. And I will tell you what we discussed during that meeting. I will give you the topics of this conversation item by item. And our Armenian counterpart, the Deputy Prime Minister, said that that's right, we need to speak about this openly, honestly. But before I answer your question, I will go item by item, answering the question that you asked. And that's how we did it during the narrow format meeting. It's not a secret, everyone should know this. But before I say this, I would like to note one very important thing. Russian and Armenian people, they are connected with the ties of friendship, and we enjoyed special relations for centuries. Our relations are truly special, relations between Russia and Armenia, between Russian people and Armenian people. I told Prime Minister Pashinyan, he can confirm this. I told him, everything that's good for Armenia, for Armenians, will be acceptable for Russians. Do whatever you deem necessary if it's in the interests of the Armenian people. You are the leader, you are responsible for making these decisions, so it'll be however you say it is. It is not going to ruin the humanitarian ties between us. It is not going to ruin the political ties between us. We are speaking about merely economic things, everything that could be calculated. It needs to be calculated. It needs to be looked into. Then the decision should be made. Like I said, the crisis in Ukraine started with the attempt to bring Ukraine to the EU, and we were not against this. We simply said that, for example, phytosanitary norms are different. It means the access to the markets in Russia, back in the Soviet Union. It means also all the Eurasian Economic Union countries, the phytosanitary norms are much stricter than they have in Europe. For example, we have restrictions on the GMO products. Our people don't want to eat this kind of produce, this kind of food. Well, they don't. And we need to take this into consideration, because there is no research on the consequences for people when you eat this kind of food. And then there are technical regulations which are absolutely different. For example, some things it's possible to sell in Russia, others not. With, for example, steel works and so on and so forth. So a lot of things, they cannot exist together. It doesn't mean that we are against something. We are for it, but it will require time, and it will require money as well, funds as well. Because to ensure some standards in Europe that are more advanced than the ones that we have, we need to invest money in the production facilities to ensure that we can follow these standards on our side. That's why to combine two things tomorrow is practically impossible. That's why we will have to if we speak about the cooperation in the economy, about the integration of the economy, we will have to put it on hold. So you were asking about what do they have to gain. So it's something that is up for discussion, but I can explain our perspective. And I'm not only speaking about Russia, but the rest of the Eurasian Economic Union member states. So what's the advantage of being part of this union or entering this union, joining this union? It's an access to a large protected market across the entire Eurasian Economic Union space, Russia and other states, tariff-free trade, common technical and phytosanitary norms and regulations, simplified logistics. We do not have common borders, but moving the commodities and the goods and the services, they are being done in most profitable way. The low energy prices, 600 euro in Europe and 150 something. Well, you cannot compare these two numbers. I'm just going item by item, because everyone is speaking about energy now. It is important, but this is not the only advantage you get. Investment. In accordance with the EAEU bank data, $4.9 billion of investment were made into Armenia, and 86% of those came from Russia. And we are not taking into consideration here the capitals that originated from Russia. They're not coming directly from Russia, but representatives of the Russian business structures, they are investing into the Armenian economy. But, well, 86%, actually, the number is much bigger. And the European partners promised to invest 2.5 billion euro. Who is going to invest? When are they going to invest? And still, 2.5 is less than 4.9. Now, free trade agreements, because they will have to withdraw from this as well. What will be the outcome? Number one, full-scale custom control and custom fees. They will be brought back. They will need to take this into consideration. They will need to calculate. Secondly, the documents in the phytosanitary oversight field, they will not be mutually recognized anymore. So we will not recognize their norms anymore. So we will have to go back to that. Maybe we will recognize them later, after some time. Maybe not. We will need to look at these commodities. At wine, where is it going? Spain, France, Italy, Portugal, where? We will need to think about that. And reduction of mutual trade, of tourism, of other things. Then the laborers from Armenia. So different norms will be applied to them. What does it mean? It means that they will need to buy patent to work in Russia, to get access to the insurance system in Russia. They will need to be living in Russia for 5 years, so it will be a totally different story for them. So everyone needs to understand this and to speak about this openly and clearly and honestly. And we will need to issue permits for the Armenian transport operators is that's yet another field, separate field. And then we will have to raise tariffs for the railway shipping. because currently they are enjoying the Russian domestic tariffs. We will have to raise them to the level of the CIS. Well, and of course raising the energy prices as well. There is not going to be any preferences in this regard. The preliminary estimates that the experts are speaking about, they will lose 14% of the GDP from this. Is that a lot or not a lot is a different matter to discuss. But still, all of these things need to be considered. For example, if we look at the 3 last years, since 2023, the Russia's GDP was 4.1% growth, 4.9%, and last year 1%. So 10.3% growth over the last 3 years. EAEU 0.4, 1.1, 1.5. And now look at the Eurasian Economic Union 2023, 4.3, 24, 5% of growth, and 2025, 1.7. So 11.4% over the last 3 years. So one organization grew by 11.4, and another organization grew by 3%. I know that in Europe it's more difficult, so it's a different organization, it's a high-tech economy, and their level is higher probably, but these are the trends that I'm speaking about. So we are growing faster. And we would like to ask our Armenian partners, our friends, and Prime Minister Pashinyan said it himself that he plans and he believes it would be the right thing to hold a referendum regarding what's the place of Armenia, Eurasian Economic Union or European Union. And we would like to ask them to do this as soon as possible.
A question from Zvezda TV channel. If I may, let's talk about the main theme of your visit. You took part in the Eurasian Economic Forum yesterday, and the main topic there is betting on AI amid the global digital race. Well, some say it's just hype, but if we skip the hype, what is Russia's place in the global race? And you also spoke about some projects in Moscow, the introduction of artificial intelligence. And what projects do we have that we could share with our partners, with the EAEU members, including Armenia while it's still there, in order to ensure technological sovereignty and leadership, especially as we're subjected to sanctions pressure from the West? Well, I gave the example of Moscow ambulances. It's just something that came to my head. And it's not the only example of using artificial intelligence in Moscow healthcare. I think you might be aware of X-ray and other kinds of diagnostics imaging, where you collect all of the images from around Moscow, you give them to a narrow specialist for analysis. It cuts down time, it raises the quality of analysis. We've also made progress on autonomous vehicles. Our e-commerce platforms, such as Ozon and Wildberries, they're very successful in that. They're also establishing their own financial institutions. And we also have successes in science and education, using AI tools quite successfully. It's very important for maintaining technological sovereignty. I think Russia is one of 3 countries who have an actual chance at developing a sovereign artificial intelligence and who are actively doing that. You need to have your own technologies, And our Chinese friends are giving the fundamentals to everyone who's willing to take the basic technologies that you can use to develop your own solutions, and that is very good. Some of our companies say it openly. Yes, we took some of those technologies. Yes, we agreed with the developer, and others said that they're creating their own technologies from the ground up. It requires significant investments, of course. Sber is currently doing that. And of course, if you have a sovereign platform, you will be able to use these kind of technologies in defense, in public governance, and in other critical fields. We're one of a few countries who are actively doing that. And of course, it would be much easier and more effective if we could join forces with our partners. And I'm, of course, talking about EAEU partners, first of all. And it's something we discussed during our informal conversations. Various formats were proposed, and it's attracting significant interests. We have historically had very good relations and high level of trust. We are willing to share the know-how with our friends and partners so that EAEU countries can create their own national platforms. And we are fully prepared for cooperation in this field, including in critical areas. As I said yesterday, you need more than just investments for AI. You need a lot of energy too. Google is now planning to build its platforms with an output of 1 gigawatt each, I think. We have our nuclear generation capabilities. We have hydropower, including in Siberia, in the north, where the climate is cold. You have lots of natural cooling. So we have a clear competitive advantage. And there are many beneficial factors that we can enjoy. And we're ready to use that. We're ready to share with our EAEU partners, and our friends and partners are interested. A question from RIA Novosti. Yes, please. We listened to the conclusions from other participants, but what is your opinion? Are EAEU countries still interested in deepening the integration? How is the current situation influencing this? And today is the anniversary of the EAEU treaty. Do you think the format will change, and will the integration level change? What is the future? Well, I think the interest is maintained from everyone's side. The case of Armenia has just been explained. I told you, like I told it to my colleagues during the narrow format meetings. I held nothing back. I just used the same notes that I used during the discussion with them, so there is no secret about this. So the interest from all of our partners is sustained. It's becoming even stronger because the countries who are active and who are participating in actual work, they are seeing positive results, they're seeing the positive outcomes, and they're interested in continuing this positive trend. As to how future will look, now of course we will all like to see a high-tech future, and not limited to supplying each other with food or fuel, which is of course important for food and energy security, but we would love to see high-tech and value-added products. And this is one of the reasons why the Kazakhstan chairmanship has prioritized artificial intelligence during this meeting. It's one of the key pillars of future development. I hope this will materialize. And if everything goes well, we will meet in December in St. Petersburg. Can I ask a question, please? Yes, please. You can decide among yourselves. Okay. A question from Российская газета. A question about St. Petersburg. Next week, the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, another important event, will be launched. And every year you give a keynote address, and this year you will likely have one. And so maybe you will like to share the topics that you are likely to touch upon in your keynote. And do you expect any of your EAEU colleagues to attend? Well, as to the part of your question about the substantive content of the keynote, well, I don't think I will tell you, because otherwise you won't come to listen to it yourself. But as to our partners, to our EAEU partners, they come every year. This is something that we are also expecting this year. We expect to see large delegations, and an EAEU observer state will be the main guest of the forum. A question from Mir TV channel. You mentioned saying that if a tiger thrives in a country, anyone will thrive. Kazakhstan and Russia shared tigers. What significance does this have? Well, we prize nature, and we are actively working to protect nature. Now, of course, we didn't personally hunt down the tigers so that their population declined, but we lived as part of a single state, so we bear common responsibility. And it is now something we can do together. We can replenish their population and help the environment in other aspects. I will give you an example from a country outside the EAEU. Tajikistan gave us snow leopards during its time, and now we have a population, including in the Caucasus. There are many other examples. I also mentioned various humanitarian and cultural fields. It's something where cooperation is also blooming. A question from Kommersant. Mr. President, on the May 9th press conference, you said that the Ukraine conflict seems to be coming to an end. Could you please elaborate what you meant? Because ever since you said that, everyone has been racking their heads trying to understand that. And despite the Starobelsk strike and despite the promised retaliatory strikes on Kiev, do you think we should expect an end, and where could that happen? Well, as to the timelines, I think both you and your colleagues realize that naming specific time frames while the combat is ongoing would be a mistake. It's not something that is done, and it's not something I am going to do now. You've mentioned the Starobelsk strikes and the attempts to hit Russian territory and in other places. Well, since the West is supplying them with drones, it's made so much easier. They can just take another one out and press the button. But it means that we must strengthen our systems, and it's something that we will continue to do. But as to my statement that this is coming to an end, I made that statement based on a thorough analysis of the situation on the ground. Our troops are advancing every single day. In every direction. And going back to Starobelsk, I watch foreign TV channels from time to time to see what kind of a media landscape there is and what the international viewers have to watch. It's a disgrace. They're openly deceiving their citizens. When we made the strike in response to their atrocity against children, we struck the Kiev region, and the Kiev strike was covered from the early morning to late at night. Russia's an aggressor, they caused so much destruction. You, as the media, I would say, should be ashamed for your colleagues. They didn't mention the tragedy in Starobelsk even once. The fact that children died, that it was a targeted attack against our children. They pretended that this never happened. So, are they informing the public? No. They're making fools out of their audience. And so they are showing showing the drones that the Ukrainian army uses and say that they're making huge successes. And they say that those drones are expensive, hinting that the citizens must pay. So is it a public interest broadcast? No, I wouldn't say that. Now, going back to the situation on the battlefield, I think what we're seeing right now allows us to say that the situation is coming to an end. Can we... so please. A question from Russia TV. European politicians and leaders say that they're preparing for war with Russia every day, even naming a date. And so the logical question is, are we preparing for a war they're trying to wage against us? Well, as to European politicians saying that they're preparing for a war with Russia, that is just nonsense. They're pretending that this is because Russia is harboring aggressive plans against Western states. But that is just crude lies. As Joseph Goebbels said, the more incredible a lie, the easier it is for people to believe. And this is the standard Western politicians and media are using in their daily operations. Russia has never had any aggressive intentions against European countries. And the tragedy that is currently unfolding in Ukraine is caused by their actions, their policies, because they caused the state coup in 2014 that led to Russia having to defend the people of Crimea and then provide assistance to the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics that we were reluctant to recognize for years. But then when we realized that the Kiev regime will not live up to its agreements, we had to recognize the republics and then provide assistance through military means, because we took the responsibility in accordance with the interstate agreement to provide this kind of support. And this treaty was passed by the Russian parliament in a completely transparent manner. We did that step by step in full compliance with law. And they caused this tragedy, and that now they're trying to shift the blame, saying that Russia is the aggressor. No, it is just their policy. And first, they deceived us, saying that they are not going to expand to the east, not a step to the east, but now we have what we see. Russia has never threatened European countries. Everything they're doing now is just to prolong the conflict and to justify the immense costs for their budgets and to continue milking the taxpayers.
Could you give comments on the meeting with President Lukashenko? You talked for 1 hour and a half. So maybe you could share with us the topics, the things that you discussed. Probably President Lukashenko shared his conversation with President Macron, and maybe you discussed who could be part of the dialogue between Europe and Russia. From their side, yes, President Lukashenko said about his conversation with the President of France, but I don't think it would be proper to discuss it now, because that was a phone conversation between the two presidents. And President Lukashenko did that because President of France wanted him to do that, but I'm not sure if I have the right to disclose the things that they've discussed. I'm sorry. Anastasia Volodina, RT. My question is, recently, in the intelligence report that was published, it said that Ukraine sent its drone operators to Latvia, and so they are planning to launch strikes against Russia from there. If we register, if we see that these strikes are taking place, what will happen? Well, every place from where the direct military threat is emanated towards Russia, it's a lawful, legal target for us. How do you estimate the state of the negotiations, considering what happened in Starobelsk and the fact that President Trump is busy with other things? Well, it is put on hold, as they say. We maintain certain contacts. I'm not going to hide it, but there are no negotiations per se. Even though we are open for talks, we have never refused to have talks. We were not the ones to stop them. We are ready to go on with them. President Lukashenko has just voiced a very painful thing for many Russian car drivers. After the new fees were introduced, the automobile price doubled. Was that our objective? Firstly, and did you discuss it during your meeting with him? No, when we met in the afternoon, we did not discuss this, but we've had a lot of discussions around these. Our actions to protect our domestic manufacturers, we do that, but we have never restricted, and we do not restrict any supplies from the EAEU countries, especially supplies from Belarus, part of the Union state. Our actions are aimed at ensuring transparency of this process and to make sure that the markets of our partners is not used as a transit point to supply, well, in this case, of automobiles from third countries. This is the idea, not to make it look like they are just assembling these cars and then they sell them right away to the Russian market. It's a very delicate work, and there are ministries and agencies that are involved. They are calculating the percentage of... So can we describe or define this commodity as manufactured in Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan, Armenia, while they are still part of the Union, and Belarus? So they are calculated the amount, the percentage of of the commodity that was produced locally, domestically, and then we are being open about this. We say there is the threat that just the final assembly is carried out in your countries, and it's becoming just a channel, a transit channel to supply commodities from abroad. We are doing this openly, honestly, transparently. Yes, there is some mutual disputes that could arise from this, but that's just a working matter. If Armenia starts postponing the referendum, well, you know what they say about the what-ifs. Well, for how long can they sit on the two chairs? Well, ask those who are trying to sit on the two chairs. Kaliningrad. I wanted to ask about Kaliningrad to follow up what the colleagues said. Recently, we hear more and more often the statements from the Baltic states regarding NATO attacking Kaliningrad. And recently, Foreign Minister of Lithuania said that the Baltic countries have means to raise Russian air defense in the Kaliningrad region to the ground. Do you think, could such an attack happen? What will the response be? What did you say? They have means to raise the air defense bases to the ground? Well, the Russian Federation possesses every means to raise to the ground everyone and everything that will attempt to do so. Izvestia? In the European Union, they are still choosing a candidate to become an individual to negotiate with Russia on behalf of Brussels. You voiced your candidate, former Chancellor of Germany, Schröder, and in Europe they ignored these words of yours. Oh, well, they reacted to that. There was a reaction. But they were not encouraged by this. No, there was some positive reaction, negative reaction, of course, too, but there was positive reaction as well. So, what's the question? They are discussing other candidates. Several names are floated around. Alexander Stubb, President of Finland, former Chancellor of Italy, Mario Draghi, President of Germany, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, and the head of the European Council, Antonio Costa, who is the most preferable candidate for Moscow among these people. I believe the European Union should assign their own negotiator. We cannot appoint a negotiator for them. And when I talked about Schröder, I meant him as a person who could be trusted, you know, because a lot of labels were put on him, that he is a friend of mine and so on. Yes, we are friends. I'm not hiding this. Is this a bad thing? But, well, that's why there is trust. And despite our friendship, he has always, and I would like to emphasize this, I would like you to hear this, and people in Germany hear this, he always put the interests of the German people and German state on the first place. When we started the Nord Stream construction, the pipelines construction, was that a bad thing for the German state, for the German economy? And now, when they refused to buy our energy, is this better for them? Now they are trying to receive oil from Kazakhstan, but it's going through our territory. I'm not going to list all the things that they did. They are trying to restore something, and Schröder did what he did with the best interest of the German people in mind. And we did not agree about everything. We had disputes, we had disagreements, we had misunderstandings, but we were always looking for a compromise, and we have always found one. This is the person you can negotiate with. But we are not the ones who choose. I've just mentioned a person. Someone like Schröder could become a candidate, I said. It's not up to us to find a negotiator. But we will have to meet with an individual they choose or not, then that will be up to us. And we'll see, because they are not suggesting anyone. When they suggest someone, we'll see. Do we want to meet with them or not? Can we trust them or not? Because we held negotiations in Minsk, we signed the Minsk Accords, and now we learned that they were signed just to gain time to arm Ukraine, but not to resolve all the issues via peaceful means, something that we were always striving for. Thank you. That's enough. Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you.